jumping right into our final panel of the day, we're going to focus on the question of workforce and skills training here. With me to discuss that are, on my far left, Kendra Parlock, who's VP of Partnership Development at Empower. And then next to me, William Halal, Professor Emeritus of Management, Tech, and Innovation at George Washington University. So I want to start by zooming out, because I know, Bill, you've been looking at questions of technology and innovation for longer than many of us in this room.
50 years.
For 50 years. So, one of the questions that we began the day with was this idea of whether all the focus right now on AI is justified or whether it's overhyped. So from your perspective, having seen multiple cycles of tech innovation of the next new thing, what's your perspective on AI today?
Well, I'll address the overhyped issue in another your next point, but I'd like to take a long-term perspective on AI, development of AI. I'm a futurist, a forecaster, and I'm impressed by the perspective of social evolution, moving from one stage of social development to another. And it seems to me that AI is the culmination of the digital revolution, and that we're moving beyond knowledge, because AI is automating knowledge. And beyond knowledge is, by definition, consciousness, and I'll explain that in a minute. To make that point, I want to go back to the origins of the digital revolution in the 70s. When I was a young professor, it was so clear to me that we were going to see this information age, that's what we called it then, about the year 2000. All of the signals I saw focused on the year 2000. And I will tell people, my students and business managers, that I think we're going to be living with personal computers. That was when computers filled rooms, if you remember that. Punch cards, I mean, And the typical response I would get is, why in the world would anybody want a personal computer? Now, that's very telling, I think. It shows how hard it is to imagine such a big change in social evolution, a new age. But in fact, it did happen. In the year 2000, we were all using PCs and laptops, and we were all doing knowledge work, and organizations saw themselves as knowledge organizations doing knowledge management. Well, something similar to that is happening right now, I think, and it's just as hard to understand. As I said, AI, social media as well, is automating knowledge, and the big question is what follows knowledge when we get it, when the knowledge is all automated? Well, by definition, it's consciousness. Consciousness consists of two major focuses. The objective stuff, this comes from philosophy, it's well accepted. The objective stuff and the subjective stuff. Well, the machines are automating the objective stuff. And so attention is driven up the hierarchy into the subjective realm. Emotions, values, beliefs, vision, purpose, creativity, imagination, all of that stuff. And that's where we're going now, I think. It's a new age. The technology is still going to be there. It's always going to be important and used. But the focus, I think, is shifting to the subjective realm. And the best example of that is all of this post-factual phenomena we see today. People can believe whatever they want, regardless of the facts. So we're operating at that level now because of social media. So that in a nutshell is what I think is happening. I have a book out called Beyond Knowledge, which explains we're living beyond knowledge now. And if you're interested, you could go to beyondknowledge.org and look for the first chapter.
I mean, that's a somewhat kind of scary forecast coming from a futurist.
It's very encouraging, I think. I think it's we're going to fulfill the potential of humanity by realizing all of this potential that we have that the machines do not have.
So can we start on this high level then, just talking about this post-factual world, which I think in media we often describe as a post-truth world. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you come to the conclusion that this is a more optimistic scenario than a worrying one?
Well, it's a difficult scenario because we have to make sense out of the enormous diversity of subjectivity, the enormous diversity of opinion that we're seeing all around us. But I don't think as a civilization we have any choice because the challenges are so enormous, climate change and everything else. It's going to require what I see as a global consciousness. And I think that is evolving slowly now. A global consciousness that sees the world as an interdependent system, which it is. The information systems are all connected. The economic systems are all connected through outsourcing and all that. It's a de facto single system. And if we can recognize that and change our thinking to see that, then I think we can see our way to global consciousness. It's what William Shatner experienced when he went into space a few months ago. He was overwhelmed. And it's what the astronauts all felt, the overview effect.
Well, having been at this, in this stratosphere looking down at the world, we're now going to come right down to the ground level. Because Kendra, you're working not in the abstract world of ideas, which is extremely valuable, but abstract.
Yeah.
You're working with the reality of workforce training, questions of diversity, and how to think about AI and new technologies. So what's your perspective on I guess, one, how the world of work is changing, and two, whether or not the American workforce is up to the challenge?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I come to this work as a practitioner, right? So, right now I'm doing strategic work as a leader of partnership development for Empower, but I also led a team that was responsible for training young people in West Baltimore in technology, in IT, in cyber, in cloud computing, working directly with the trainees for not just the training, but social support, mentorship, coaching, and obviously connecting those young people with jobs. And yes, the shift right now is significant. It's critical. We've heard several of the panelists talk about bad AI, and how to mitigate that is bringing diverse ideas, diverse people, people from diverse backgrounds to the conversation, and that's where Empower plays. So we're a national nonprofit, and our mission is one of economic mobility through tech, and we're working to advance racial and gender equity in tech, and we're doing that by being deeply rooted in community, very connected to employer partners. We are partnered with many Fortune 500 companies who are absolutely dedicated to bringing in diverse talent to mitigate some of these risks.
We've talked in previous panels about the risk of bad AI, of bias in AI. Do you feel like you're getting sufficient buy-in from companies? And to the extent that companies do want to address these challenges, are they able to find sufficiently trained and skilled people to help them address them?
Yeah, they are, the best companies, the better companies are committed to it and are looking to do that. We know that the companies that are most innovative and are most profitable through innovation are the ones that have diverse teams. And so our best partners, they're working with us through the whole value chain or ecosystem. So they are obviously funding us as a nonprofit, but committed to mentoring, coaching those we serve. And we serve young people from under-resourced communities, 18 to 26, also military veterans with a focus on women of color. But importantly, what these companies and what the champions, the individuals, the champions in these companies are doing is they're saying, we need, we're lacking talent, thinking about cybersecurity, right now, but we're lacking talent. We need diverse talent. there are great people with capacity and skills that are needed, that can be trained, that through our industry certification, you can come right into a role. But sometimes, the culture doesn't immediately welcome that, or sometimes there is still some last mile training, mentoring, coaching that's needed. And so again, the better companies, the best companies, the champions, they're finding innovative, creative ways to do that. So whether it's an extended internship, apprenticeship that's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or a boot camp where they're again getting that, offering that last mile training. Yes, companies, there are companies out there, partners that we have who are really being innovative and committing themselves to that.
And Kendra, one more question about this idea of upskilling that we've heard about multiple times is, there was one comment earlier today about the idea that maybe the next generation should not learn coding, should not learn computer programming. Based on your experience, is that actually a valid perspective, or is that still part of what upskilling is supposed to evolve?
Yeah, the upskilling, the reskilling, again, our mission is one of economic mobility, and tech is a short path to that. And we've done research, right? We've partnered with companies and partnered with MC Burning Glass to think about how do we bring people who are in these non-tech roles, who have capacity, who want to move into a higher paying career, what do we do about that? Who are they? And so there are 2.7 million women of color who are in low paying non-tech roles who have transferable skills that easily translate into higher paying tech roles. And so we've identified like 500 paths, from these roles into the tech careers. And we are working with companies to develop programs for training to move them into those roles.
Bill, can I ask you to put your futurist hat back
Okay.
on for a second?
Yes.
So talking about the world of work, if you were to be advising somebody who's at the very start of their schooling, or say to a parent who has children in kindergarten, what kinds of career paths do you envision being the dominant ones in 2 or 3 decades time in your post-factual world?
Oh, I was prepared for a different question, Simon.
That's all right.
I mean, I was looking at the ones you told me. Do you mind if I talk about the forecast of AI?
Please go ahead.
This was what I prepared for. We did a study, my little company, TechCast, it's a project at university, did a little study on AI that I think will interest you. We use what I call collective intelligence. We get all the background information we can. We have a number of experts, like 30 or so, that look at all that and they give us their best judgment on specific questions. And in this case, we used GPT as well as another source of information. And here's what we learned from all of that. It's a little shocking. I think what it tells me is that some of these fears about the singularity, overcoming human capabilities and all that, are overblown. Here's what we learned. The threat of mass unemployment is, I think, overdone. The estimate was that we would see global unemployment increase from roughly 8% now to 12%. It's going to be, something's going to happen, but it's not going to be cataclysmic if our data are right. And I think it's reasonable, because what's going to happen is jobs are going to upgrade for the most part, and there's a whole bunch of jobs that we don't even understand yet. There's no lack of work out there. Climate change is going to take enormous efforts for decades. The second thing we learned is that the prospect for a artificial superintelligence that eclipses humans and creates all kinds of havoc, that is probably not likely, simply because machines do not exhibit consciousness the way humans do. They may simulate it, but it's not real consciousness. Only humans have real consciousness, agency. And so I think that's not likely, and that's what the data shows. And the Control, we think the data suggests that we should be able to have good or to strong control over AI, and I can talk about the way we'll do that. And finally, the impact on society and individuals, humanity, are positive. That's what we learned from this study. We could be wrong. You know, it's a limited study. It's only one study. But I've been doing this for 30 years, and it's a robust method. It's good. It works. I think this is a way to. It's a moderate perspective that dispels some of the more extreme fears that we hear constantly about. You know, the world's going to end, civilization is going to collapse. I think it's going to be a powerful tool, but I think humans will be able to control it.
But so, Bill, to bring it back to the question that I tried to ask, and then
you
skillfully steered away from.
Yeah,
if the global unemployment rate is going from 8% to 12%, and you've got a global workforce of roughly 5 billion,
right.
So that's 200 million people or so losing their jobs.
Right.
What jobs are being lost?
Well, all the routine jobs will disappear. That's true. The very structured jobs, a lot of either blue collar or white collar jobs that are routine. Those will disappear. But service jobs and professional jobs, we think, will be updated. That's another study we did, and I think that's entirely reasonable. The AI is going to do the grunt work, freeing humans to do the stuff they've never been able to get to before because they were so busy doing the grunt work. And all of the creativity, the innovation, the working relationships with other people, the difficulty we have of just working with other people, getting agreement, that takes enormous skill, and that's a high order talent that's required to do that. So that's, I think, roughly the way, and there's a whole bunch of jobs we don't even have a faintest inkling of yet that are probably going to appear. It's a new era, a very different era, dealing with all of these crises that are going to produce innumerable challenges for all of us. There's no shortage of work. There never has been, there never will be.
Yeah.
Kendra, is that, I mean, this is a slightly reductive way of putting it, but people talk about the threat previously from technology and globalization affected blue-collar workers more with AI, et cetera. It might be white-collar professions that are at risk. From your perspective at Empower, how do you see that blue versus white-collar divide?
Yeah, well, in terms of, risk, in terms of jobs going away, we are, very thoughtful about that. We have, a tremendous board and executives from leading tech companies on our boards and coalitions and steering committees. And, what they're telling us, absolutely there are jobs that are going away, but there are jobs that are being created and new skill sets that are needed, right? So, beyond, that skill set, that IT training, that certification, we also need to be making sure that we're committed to training, how to think, how to use data, how to ask questions, how to be a lifelong learner, right? So there is still, there's opportunity and still, things that we can do right now to mitigate this.
To make things just a bit more concrete, I mean, we talk about upskilling, we talk about lifelong learning.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's kind of like a case study, one or two that you can talk
Yes.
about in terms of who are the people that you work with at Empower? What kinds of jobs are you able to place them into? Just to give us a sense of how it works.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Yes, so Empower, we've been training individuals since 2010, and since that time, we've had 9,000 people who've passed through our program. So I have a few stories I could share, one or two. But one that really sticks out for me, I came to Empower from government and a long career in the science part of STEM in R&D and innovation. But so came to nonprofit work and leadership work with really fresh eyes. And my first year with Empower, which was 3.5 years ago, I came to know this young man, Miguel. And Miguel came to Empower. He was sleeping on his grandmother's couch, right? His grandmother is the one who actually filled out his online application. But when he learned about it and the opportunity, he quickly got on board and yeah, I think I can do this. He had been disconnected from work. He was working setting up tents for events, and barely had made it through high school, had only achieved his GED. But again, just really excited about the opportunity. He came to the program, did phenomenal. He really impressed. We invite corporate partners in to mentor and coach and get to know our trainees as we work through the placement process. So he won a really coveted internship at Northrop Grumman, and he was able to have this tremendous internship, and then was placed in a role. So fast forward 2 years later, he's a cyber engineer, security clearance, six-figure salary. He's no longer sleeping on his mother's couch, and has helped even his mom buy a home. So there's so many stories I can share, and really love this one in terms of how Miguel grew in his professional journey in cyber. Also want to tell a story on the other side in terms of support. This is not corporate, but Empower was named a partner to the Department of Homeland Security, CISA. And what is really significant about that, how that partnership evolved, is that it was a team of individuals that said, look, got what? 500,000 open cyber jobs across the country. We need so many, we need people helping in all capacities, right? So, who are all the people doing this work? And, they drove over to East Baltimore, took a van from, I think they were in Virginia, and, met with us, sat down with us, met our trainees, and met our alumni, and through that partnership, we created cyber security training hubs across the country, including Baltimore. And so again, that's just a great example of personal commitment and how lives are changed that way.
And can I ask, right now the macroeconomic backdrop, of course, is that it's an incredibly tight labor market in America. Unemployment rate is 3.7%. The labor force participation rate is higher than it was before the pandemic. Does that make it easier to find people in the sense that people know that they can move into better jobs? Or are people less willing to go through the hard yards of the training because there's so many decent jobs that are readily available already?
Yeah, I would say that with Empower, we're seeing what employers are seeing, right, is that people are being very specific about, what they want, how they want to work, where they want, the culture to be like. So that puts a lot of, good pressure on, Empower's partners to think deeply about that. So yes, we're seeing this, a need or a desire for, remote or hybrid work. So even though, yes, there seems that there are jobs available, there are, people kind of holding out for the best case scenario and the best situations. Yeah.
Bill, one topic that we've discussed, I think, in virtually every panel, but I think it's worth bringing up again, is the question of regulation. And again, taking your 5-decade-long sweep of technology and its development in America, what's your view of the way that the government should be approaching AI?
Yeah, I've been intrigued by the various proposals that people have entertained, and I see them falling into 3 categories that are all important. The first is testing a system, an AI system, just the way you test a new drug or an automobile or an aircraft before you use it, just to make sure it's meets minimum requirements. I think that should be mandatory. And secondly, to monitor the performance of systems. I think it's criminal that we don't have data on the misinformation that social media disseminates. It seems to me it's obvious. Somehow we ought to be able to measure the rough amount of disinformation that's being sent out by the different platforms, just to make it transparent. And something like that should be done, I think, with AI. And finally, I think there's a need for override systems so that you can turn an AI system off if it's malfunctioning. Like a simple example were those two Boeing 747 planes that crashed because of faulty autopilots. It's just criminal that there wasn't a working override system that the pilots could have used for those.
And Kendra, from your view, I mean, regulation, and again, this is a point that's been made, companies are not necessarily waiting for the government to come forward with, two stone tablets and saying this is the way that you do regulation in AI. They're doing things themselves. And from your perspective, on the upskilling front, what needs to come from the public sector and what needs to come from the private sector?
Yeah, so from the private sector, it's definitely thinking about, what are your goals? What are you attempting to achieve? Is it, are you looking to bring diverse talent into higher level roles, leadership roles within your organization? Are you looking to, improve retention, right? Are you looking to, just increase, diversity of thought amongst your project teams? From the, public sector, we're really thinking about, I worked in city government for 2 years, and, it is important for, the local workforce development boards, for the mayor's offices, for the state offices to provide incentives for organizations to, think about bringing in talent from diverse places, incentivizing companies, right, to think about, yes, you can bring in someone who has, tremendous, capacity and capability, but just may not need, just that last mile training, some additional training. So here, let's make that happen, and here's a tax benefit for you to do that. So it's absolutely collaboration that's needed.
Great. Any questions from the audience? Yes, at the table over there.
This is for Kendra, if I may. You have an audience here that's really interested in what you're doing, and most of us, if not all of us, are very capable in the exact things that you need. If there's one thing you'd recommend us when we go home tonight, like what can we do to help and support in this area? What would that recommendation be?
Just
Could we have your name and affiliation?
Gil Appel, I'm an assistant professor at GW.
So you said you're limiting me to just one thing. Well, it would be to, if it's one thing, to make, okay, I can't talk about one thing. The first thing would be to really think about how you bring people into your organization, right? So, we know that there is there's been a mandate from the White House. There's always conversation about skills-based hiring. Like really make that a practice, in your organization. Think really deeply about, what's needed for a particular role. And then think about, who you partner with, in terms of talent. Like, so you're going to, get the same results if you always choose the same partners and take the same paths. But if you just do a stakeholder analysis. Think about your community. Think about, where you are. Who else can you talk to, right? And so, yes, it's the community organizations, the nonprofit training partners. So really think deeply about that. And, what we see as, being where we're most successful, with organizations in terms of bringing in talent is that it's not just a human resource responsibility. It's the CIO, the CISO, the CTO also, putting pressure on the organization and championing ways to bring in diverse talent and looking at talent pathways. So those would be my recommendations. And call me, find me on LinkedIn. Yes.
Any other questions from the crowd? If not, let me just ask one final question, and this really is for both of you. But again, one of the themes that has come up today is this idea that the government is learning, but there's still kind of insufficient expertise in government, and historically, it's been difficult for government to retain top tech talent for obvious reasons. So I guess at first, maybe your historical perspective, Bill. What does the government need to do to be able to ameliorate that problem? And then maybe, Kendra, you can talk about kind of in practice the sorts of programs that you think are useful.
What problems specific was it?
How can government both attract and retain sufficient expertise?
Oh, God. Well, it's a shame that government has been turned into a scapegoat, the deep state stuff, all of that. Government, living in Washington, I love meeting people who've worked in government. They are competent, dedicated people. They deserve more attention, more honors. And that would, I think, be the single thing I would think of to recognize the service that government people perform, and so they can attract the best talent. Yeah.
It's going to be tough in a post-factual world to make that argument.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, boy.
Kendra, what about you? Have you seen useful programs? I mean, beyond offering higher pay packages, are there programs that are constructive in this respect?
Well, definitely apprenticeships. Yeah. In Maryland specifically, I had the opportunity to participate in the Maryland Apprenticeship Innovation Program, right? Specific for tech, because really tech has been, apprenticeships have existed a while in other industries, but for tech it's been a little more difficult. So thinking about still like how can we get folks to think about someone is not going to show up on day one knowing everything, but in 6 months they can be more than prepared for that entry-level tech role through a 6-month 12-month 18-month apprenticeship. So funding apprenticeships is really is important. Also thinking about some of the like workforce innovation, the Opportunity Act referred to as WIOA, thinking about that program and some of the things that can handcuff a training provider in terms of reporting or how we are connecting with people in the community. So those are a couple.
I have something I thought of since then. I think an enormous need to reinvent government. The reason we see autocracies in such favor around the world is because most governments don't work very well. And so people resort to autocrats who will get things done. And I think it means that the burden is on governments to reinvent themselves so they work better. I think it was 20 years ago, there was a big movement, a very serious movement to reinvent government in this city. And it stopped when Al Gore did not win the election because he was behind this. the election of whatever it was, 1980 or whatever. And we should reinvent, we should revisit that. There's a need to turn government into an entrepreneurial institution so that it has the same dynamic, inventive qualities that business has. We could do it. We just have to find the political will to do it. And then government would be a more interesting place to work. It would be more productive. And I think people would be drawn to the public sector.
Well, on that note, just find the political will is nice to hear and practice. We'll see. It's been a terrific day. There are going to be drinks and canapes out there. So
Oh my God.
if you're thirsty or hungry, please stick around. I'd like to thank the two panelists for this discussion and
Thank you.
thank all of you for sticking around through all of the different discussions and panels and keynotes this afternoon. I hope it was a productive day for you. There's people from Google and Economist Impact who are going to be in the room, so please feel free to find them and continue the discussion that way. Thank you very much.